Rehoboth Beach Board of Adjustment. We'll do the roll call first. I see Lou Katz is here, Barry Brandt, Linda Kaufman, and myself. So we have a quorum. We have 4. We only needed 3. I know that Walt Cassell, our newest member, will not be able to make it tonight. He had booked a trip before he was appointed to the board, so he's not able to attend tonight. So tonight, let me ask this first. Ann, do we have any general correspondence that we need to be aware of?
Keep you in line.
Okay, and could you tell us whether or not the meeting was, how it was noticed?
The agenda was posted in City Hall and on the city portal on October 21st and sent out to the subscribers.
Okay. You said there's no correspondence. We don't have any minutes to approve today, do we? No. Is there any old business? All right. So that brings us to the new business, which is the motion for rehearing tonight. This evening, the Board of Adjustment will revisit one case, that of 240 Rehoboth Avenue, which we first heard and decided on August 26, 2019. In that case, the owner appealed the decision of the building inspector. The building inspector ruled that the dimensions of an exterior deck and stairway, which the owner sought to erect, would have to be included in the gross floor area of the building. The property in question is a commercial property. We affirmed the decision of the building inspector. The owner has filed a motion for rehearing of that case. The rules of the Board of Adjustment allow for a party to file a motion for rehearing. According to our rules, we can grant a motion for a rehearing if we find the original decision was based on A, mistake, inadvertent surprise or neglect, or B, newly discovered evidence which by due diligence could not have been discovered at the time of the original hearing, or C, fraud, misrepresentation, or other misconduct of an adverse party. In this particular case, the owner is alleging that all 3 criteria apply. In order for him to prevail, we need only find that he has met one of the 3 criteria. Our rules further provide that we are to decide a motion for rehearing only on the pleadings and affidavits submitted by the parties. The rules do not provide for live testimony, nor do they provide for any additional arguments by the parties. So the members of the board are going to have a discussion of the issues based upon the paperwork which has been submitted to us. You folks in the audience will be able to sit here and listen in. It will be as if an imaginary curtain has been set up between you, the members of the audience, and we here tonight. You'll be able to hear us talk about the cases, but we won't be able to hear from you. If we deny the motion for rehearing, our original decision stands. But if we grant the motion for rehearing, a new hearing with witnesses, testimony, and argument will be scheduled for a later date unless the parties resolve the issue without the need for another hearing. Now that the ground rules have been explained, we will begin our consideration of this motion for rehearing. And I would like to suggest to my fellow board members, first of all, let's not be shy. I'm sure we all have opinions and things to say. And let's not be daunted by this imaginary curtain that stands between us and the audience. Let's have a free exchange of information. And I'd like to start off by suggesting that we start our deliberations by discussing the second criteria, and that's this. Is there newly discovered evidence in this case which the applicant could not have known about before the August 26th hearing? And I ask the question and I'll answer my own question to my frame of mind. I would say that there is. After the August 26th hearing, the building inspector issued a notice dated September 24th, advising the public that as of that date, decks, balconies, and porches would be included in computing gross floor area. That notice also makes clear that a different interpretation of the code had been in use prior to that date, and all applications submitted prior to that date would be reviewed under the previous code interpretation. Since the applicant submitted his plans prior to September 24, 2019, I believe he should be entitled to the benefit of having his plans considered under the previous interpretation, like everyone else who submitted his plans prior to that date. And I think that had he had the information contained in the public notice dated September 24th, he would have made it clear to us, and it would have been a significant part of his presentation to the board on that day, and it may have affected the outcome of the hearing. So to my way of looking at it, the second criteria clearly applies, and I think that the applicant has met the burden of proof in making that argument to us. So I would be prepared to approve this motion for rehearing based on that second criteria right now. Now, if there are those on the board who agree with me, we could continue the discussion of this issue, then move to a motion to approve, and that would be the end of the hearing. We would, if things go the way I suggest they go, then we would have the hearing would be concluded if we could approve that the applicant has met the burden of the second criteria. Any discussion?
So my initial reaction to the three rules, and I'm going to get to number 2 first, but I don't believe that number 3 would apply. I don't think there was fraud or misrepresentation or misconduct. My initial reaction to number 2 as I read through this was that it didn't seem as though there was any newly discovered evidence at first reading, because the newly discovered evidence, in my mind, was the same evidence that we heard at that hearing and then we heard the following. What is bothersome to me and what makes me rethink that is the language that went in the notice that clearly says will be reviewed to previous code interpretation. As you stated, that tells me that there was a previous code interpretation, and I think it's been established that there were 2 different interpretations, one by 2 different people, but the notice says a previous code interpretation. If it had said anything other than that, I would be inclined that 2 doesn't apply, but I'm leaning with you that
Thank you.
that seems to me that says was a code interpretation before, and now all of a sudden it's a new code interpretation.
I can tell you that if I was the attorney for the applicant and I had had the benefit of this document, I would have waved it like a flag at the hearing. This would have been a big part of a presentation I'm sure that the applicant would have used had he had it in hand on the night of the hearing. Any other discussion?
Yeah, Jerry, A and C do not apply in my mind, but B, I believe does. And I'm in agreement with Linda here. It's almost like it was after the fact. And yes, I mean, there's back and forth with the wording here. So I'm in favor of bringing this back.
I'm definitely in favor of bringing it back. I agree with what you said, Jerry.
Okay. So if, Linda, do you want to have further comment?
Yeah, having said that, what I need to understand that we're bringing back, is it the entire case, which included the decision of the building inspector, and in lieu of that, a variance, or are we simply ruling that the rehearing would be on the interpretation of the building inspector? Because it was a 2-part case.
We're not bringing back the variance. The only motion for rehearing, according to my reading, is the motion from the appeal from the building inspector. It's not a variance.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
So
That what will we be rehearing? We'll be rehearing the decision of the building inspector.
the appeal from the building inspector's decision.
Okay, let's,
And that's the first part of the previous meeting, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
But
okay.
All right?
I think that's how the wherefore clause reads, that it's requesting that the board establish a date for a rehearing of its appeal from the decision of the city.
Right. So it's not a 2-part.
Not for
Not a
both, just for
two-parter,
the
it's a
one.
one-parter.
I just want to be clear. That's how I read it, but I wanted to make sure somebody else read it that way.
Okay? And insofar as, what that hearing is going to look like, it's going to be from the beginning, a new complete hearing with the parties able to use whatever new evidence or information they have in presenting their cases, the cases to the board, if it can't be resolved. Now, practically speaking, if I'm reading here that the building inspector is saying, if you've submitted plans prior to the 24th and they're under the old interpretation, we're going to approve those plans. I'm not sure why there would be the need for a meeting, but if there is a need for the meeting, we'll be here to consider it if we approve this, the motion for a rehearing on the second criteria. All right. Is there any further discussion about the second criteria? I don't see any. So could I get a motion to approve the motion for rehearing based upon the fact of newly discovered evidence?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. So there'll be a rehearing, and we'll reschedule that with the clerk. So the parties can reschedule. November 25th will be the rehearing date.
How many do we have that night already?
This will be the third? All right.
The time.
Excuse me?
The time on the 25th.
Well, so we're going to, that's going to be the next issue here, next. So we've concluded the motion for rehearings. We have other business we're going to attend to now, and that involves the election of officers. We have two positions available, vice chair and secretary, and it's been, I think it would be wonderful if we could get a motion to renominate Linda as vice chair and Lou as secretary. Who'd like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Somebody second it. One.
Can we second? I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimously appointed. Congratulations again, folks. And then we're going to talk about possible changes to the rules. I had proposed changing the time for the hearing from 7, the normal time, from 7 to 5. Linda has told me that she would think 6 would be a better time to start. I'm flexible. I'm willing to compromise on that, but I would like to move the meeting time up, the regular meeting time up to 6 o'clock, with the understanding that from time to time, the agenda may cause us to need to start earlier. I would like to avoid having meetings go till 11 o'clock at night. So, and we have, I think all of us on the board at this point, and the city administration, have a feel for how long some of these hearings are going to take. So when we see an evening that looks like it's going to be busy, I appreciate getting notice from you, Ann, when based upon your instincts. And in those cases, I'll solicit the board's availability to see if we might be able to start earlier. But I'd like to get a vote on changing the rules to move the meeting, the regular meetings up from 7 to 6 o'clock.
Motion?
Do I need a
mean-
I'll make that motion.
Yeah, just for the record, 6 o'clock to me gives anybody from the public a little bit better chance of attending if they are working. And so I felt 5 might cut that participation. So I think 6 works. It also just, seemed to be a better time, so.
All right.
So I'll make the motion for 6 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. Now, were there any other changes to the rules we were going to consider tonight?
All the housekeeping ones.
The housekeeping,
You want me to just kind of read these as a motion each time?
well, you know what?
Is there anything controversial in there?
No, not as far as I'm concerned,
I
there's
think
not.
it's to make Ann's life a little better.
Yeah, I mean, I just think we have to read them for the public, though, and I don't have any problem.
That's fine. Let's do that. Good
So-
idea.
Rule 2.2, time of meeting from 7 to 5, we've just amended that to 7 to 6. So the next one would be Rule 3.1. Location of the public bulletin board. Again, this is housekeeping. Prior to the new city hall being built, the bulletin board was located in the old city hall and then construction trailers. The suggestion is to update the verbiage to clarify the board's new location, which is out front of City Hall. So I would make that as a motion.
Could I ask you to read all of them, and then the rest of them will make one motion? Then?
Okay, all right. Rule 4.2, again, it's a house cleaning. It was a grammatical. It's IT apostrophe S, and it should be ITS. Rule 5.4, added city secretary, again, housekeeping. The city secretary office was located in building and licensing. However, infrequent, there's occasions where no other staff member, building and licensing is present at a meeting. Update the verbiage to include the city secretary just in case no building and licensing staff member is present. Rule 7.1, change, again, housekeeping from building and licensing to office of city secretary. Same rationale as stated above. The city secretary office used to be located in the building and licensing in the past. Now, with the new city hall, it's not. And therefore, they're separated. It's the city secretary's position to keep and archive all the records, files, and meetings. Rule 17.1. And this one I need a clarification. Update the Board of Adjustment members per amendment. Oh, okay.
And then I have one more. Rule 16.1, a motion for a rehearing shall be made not. Wait. Okay, never mind. I read it wrong.
Strike that. Okay, so we have all of those. With the last one as a clarification, it would be a motion to update the Board of Adjustment members by name.
Is there a motion to approve all the changes Linda just reviewed with us?
Moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? No. So that passes unanimously. So, getting to the agenda, I think that we've covered all the business we had scheduled for tonight. Would you agree, Madam Clerk? Yeah, you would agree.
Lightning.
Can I get a motion to
Can
adjourn?
I ask one question if I could, Mr. Chair?
About what?
What will be the mechanism to get your bylaws updated now and distributed to everybody? Is that on Fred's plate, my plate, Ann's plate?
I think it's Fred's plate,
Okay,
okay?
there you go. Thank you for that.
All right. is there a
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second.
I'll second it.
Meeting is adjourned.
Ann, do we need any of this for the rehearing?
I think it's after, it's the Monday after Thanksgiving.
Fred, for the rehearing, do we need to keep any of this, or will they